Hey guys, welcome back to my channel. Today we're continuing our SiQ Cosplay series with the Jack Nicholson Joker costume, and today we're going to be working on the shirt. After much deliberation, I decided, because there's so much information that goes into making one of these shirts and a lot of really good tips and tricks on how to actually achieve a high quality costume, I've decided to make this a two-part series. So today we're going to be covering the fabric, interfacing, cutting out the pattern, prepping and sewing the front and the back of the shirt, as well as the sleeve with the cuff placket. So let's do it. So jumping right in, I've got my customer's measurements right here, and I also decided that this time we're going to use a pattern. I know, shocking, right? So we're going to be using the new look 6232 pattern. This is a universally easy pattern to go off of, and I figured that you would be able to pick this up very inexpensively at your local fabric store and be able to follow along with me. Now I've already gone ahead and cut out the pattern pieces that I need for this shirt, which is numbers 1 through 10. Let's talk about the fabric. I have chosen to use a satin fabric that has minimal spandex in it. And the reason why, and this only has roughly about 5% spandex, but it does make it a little bit more comfortable to wear. Now prepping fabric, you'll see over here on this edge, it's a little bit roughly right here. My general rule of thumb is always remove the selvage before you sew. And the reason that I say that is because all these little wrinkles that you see right here, that is the manufactured edge called the selvage. And if you don't remove that, it could cause kind of like a little bit of easing and pulling on the side of that pattern piece. And if you are trying to get an exact fit, it might not work out unless you remove the selvage first. And you can see how my fabric lays way more flat now that I removed it. So now we're going to take all of our pattern pieces and we're going to play a little fun game of Tetris. That's right, basically what you're going to do, embrace your inner Tetris gaming ability, and you're going to take all your pattern pieces and you're going to lay them out on your fabric. Now in the key on your pattern, it does show you how you can go ahead and lay these out, and it shows you the best way to utilize space. I have found in my many years of using patterns that they're not always 100% accurate, and sometimes you might have a flaw in your fabric that you're trying to avoid, and I just do it the way that I like to do it, but I mean, you know, do what you do. If you have been following me for a minute, these little buggers are very handy. These are washers that you can pick up at your local hardware store. They're very inexpensive, and they are perfect for laying down on your pattern when you're doing cutting out with a rotary cutter like I am going to in this video. I also have picked up these little beanbaggy pattern weight things from the fabric store. I know a lot of people say they're too expensive, I can't afford them, or I don't like them, or I actually like them. So I use a mixture of the weights and the pattern weights as well. So as I said in the beginning, choose your weapon. I know there's a lot of people that still rely on just actually cutting out patterns with handheld scissors. There's electric like scissor cutters that like do little up down movement for you. There's a rotary cutter. I mean, however you want to cut out your pattern, go ahead and do so. Me personally, I prefer to use my rotary cutter and my big table. It just makes it a lot quicker, a lot easier, saves me time. I can see where all my pattern pieces are. But I am in a very busy costume shop, so this does come in a lot more handy for me. But if you decide to, fun fact, when I was a lot younger, I used to take my fabric in my living room when I was growing up, and I would just stretch the fabric out on the floor and cut my pattern pieces out that way. Or you could use your kitchen table. I mean, whatever suits you. So here I'm separating the pattern pieces that I need interfacing for, because that's what we're moving on to next. Okay, so we're going to talk interfacing. I have several different types of interfacing in my shop. This one is a mid-weight fusible interfacing. Typically I'd use this for a collar on a shirt. I also have another mid-weight interfacing. This one's non-fusible. I'm not a huge fan of the non-fusible interfacings. I think that they're kind of hard to work with. And this one is a heavyweight fusible. That's not right for this job. And last but not least, we have a lightweight fusible stretch interfacing. And the fabric that I have chosen to use for this shirt has 5% stretch, as you can see from here. So I am actually going to want to use the stretchable interfacing with my shirt. Okay, so I'm going to be showing you my pattern periodically throughout the steps of sewing, just to kind of make sure, if you are following along with me with this pattern, that you kind of see where we're at. So first things first is we're going to go ahead and we're going to prep the pocket like it says to do in the pattern. And basically you're going to take your pattern piece and you're going to fold over, I think it was 1/8 of an inch, and this is pattern piece number 2, and you're just going to top stitch it. So then you're going to put right sides together and you're just going to sew, and it's roughly bent over about 1 inch, and we're just going to sew in like 5/8 of an inch on the fabric, just that lip, and we'll do that to both sides. And I know some of these steps seem kind of crazy, but they work out in the end, so bear with me. So when you fold your little piece that we've just bent over, when you pull it out and press it, it makes the top of it look like it's finished properly. So now we're going to assemble the body back, and you're going to take your piece number 4 and piece number 5. And actually you're going to take piece number 4 and you're going to take some pins, and you're going to pin where your pleats in the back of it are supposed to be. And now you take number 5, which is your upper yoke, and you should have cut 2 of these pieces out. We're just going to take one of them and pin it on both outsides of the pattern, and then we're going to identify the center of both of them and pin those. And I like to work from the outside toward the inside when there is a center pleat in the back of the shirt. But I'll pin the center, the true centers together. And the reason why is because all of this excess fabric, it might show you where to pleat it in your pattern, but I mean, sometimes I don't always mark out my fabric properly. And this just helps. Now the pins I'm using are going to be fine pins, and they're the glass head pins, either the white or the blue. And the reason that I use these is because they don't poke giant ass holes in your fabric, and they help, like you can actually sew over the top of these needles, which you might see me do occasionally throughout this tutorial, because there's sometimes when you're working with stretchy fabric, I'm not gonna lie, even for me as a seasoned seamstress, these shifty fabrics can really get away from you. And if you kind of get going a little too fast, or if you're, you know, kind of making an unsure stitch, you're gonna end up having to pick a whole bunch of mistakes out, and you don't want to do that. So these pins definitely help, and you can sew over them. Just be very careful when you do so. Okay, and you can see the back looks pretty. Now we're going to take the other yoke, and what we're going to do is we're going to pin this to the opposite side of the lower back. So how you just sewed those together, and we're going to pin the outsides. And let me back out here so you can actually see a little bit better. I don't have a camera person, so Okay, you see this back piece? It's actually going to be sandwiched in between your yoke pieces. And your yoke pieces will still be faced right sides together. It'll just have the back piece in between them. And the reason I'm kind of going through and explaining a lot of this is because this, believe it or not, was actually one of the hardest type of garments that I had to learn how to sew. So go ahead and pin that together, and then we're going to top stitch. And I made a little graph here. You actually want to sew either on or just to the left side of your existing stitch, or else when you go to turn this the right side out, you might actually see some of your stitches from previously. So to avoid that, you stitch just outside of that stitch. And turning your fabric over, it's looking good. So we're going to pull our pattern instructions out and look at what we have to do next. And it looks like the next steps are going to be to prep your front piece before we go through and add, or before we go through and sew the top of the shoulders. So I have decided I only want one pocket on the front of this shirt. And when I went and looked at our 1/6 action figure that we have of Jack Nicholson, there was actually no pockets on the front of the shirt. I don't think, if I remember correctly. So we're going to go ahead and pin this little pocket all the way around and pin until it looks like, I don't know, a little pin cushion that you're going to attach to your shirt. I know, me and my craziness. I don't know how you guys put up with me. Okay, so then we're going to go ahead and line the pocket up to the front part of the shirt that is marked out on your pattern piece, and it's going to look like this. Slippery little sucker. Okay, so now we're going to go to the sewing machine, which we're already at, and we're going to very carefully top stitch around the whole perimeter of this pocket. I like to back tack at the beginning, like at the top and the of both sides of the pocket, just to give it extra stability. And these nails are trying me. It's so hard to pick up some of these pins. Like half of this video is me trying to pick up pins. Okay, and a good back tack. And there you go, she's done. So pretty. Okay, now to pull out our instructions again. What we're going to do is we're going to take and pin. We're not going to sew yet, we're just going to take and pin the shoulder pieces from the front and the back together. And don't go ham and try to sew them just yet, because you'll be doing one extra step. So just pin them in place for now, and I'll show you why. So we're going to push the machine out of the way a little bit, and I'm going to show you in the instructions. It says you're basically going to take your shirt. Before I do it, this seam right here, this bothers me. This is another thing that you can do that will actually increase the quality of your work, is having a serger. So instead of leaving that edge raw, I actually just serged the edge of that before I go through and press everything. It just improves the quality and the look of the costume, or of, not even just of the costume, but of any garment that you make. So it is an extra step, but we do it. So then you can see I rolled everything up. So here is the front of the yoke, and here's the back of the yoke, and the majority of the shirt is down. As you can see, it's all tucked up inside that yoke, the front and the back. and their right sides facing together. You can see all of that shirt in there. And you want to make sure that you keep all of that extra fabric out of the way. You don't want to sew over that or you'll have a big problem on your hands. Not that I've ever done that before. Oh. Trial and error, you guys. Everything I've learned has been through trial and error over the years. And I've made my fair share of mistakes. So that's why I'm trying to... Zan. Okay, so we're going to show you real quick here. If you look at the pattern, it shows you basically you're going to take and roll up the body of the fabric up into the yoke. Right there. Then you're going to pin the shoulders and you're going to sew them together. And then you'll pull the excess of the shirt out one side, and then you have the option to top stitch or not. Fun fact, when I first moved out here to Las Vegas over 10 years ago, they were opening up the city center, and I worked for Aria and Vidara doing their uniforms. And one of the very first things that I had to custom make from scratch was one of these shirts, because we didn't get sent enough shirts to cover all of the employees. So I learned how to make these real quick. So there you have it. You see the inside, the top part of the inside is with the pretty fabric, and there's the raw fabric. And then when you turn around, the outside looks beautiful and your sleeves look awesome. So next we're going to move on to the placket at the bottom of the sleeves. These parts are no joke, so I want to explain it to you. I've messed these up so many times throughout my career. First things first is I usually use this chalk, which is a wax chalk, but I tested out on this fabric and it stains. And so we're going to use a regular chalk to mark out our fabric. And yes, like I said, always do a small test on a scrap piece of fabric with anything that you're marking on the fabric, because you don't want it to ruin your project. Especially when you get halfway done and then you ruin something. Oh. Okay, now with your sleeves, remember they're directional. The pattern that we're using is not directional, but you are going to have a left sleeve and a right sleeve. Some pattern pieces do have a directional though, so check for that. Okay, so I kept trying to get my camera to focus and it wouldn't. For some weird reason, next thing you know, it's like, battery dead. Okay, so... Okay, so basically what we're going to do is we are going to take this pattern piece, and with this one I'm going to do it with a little bit darker of, actually, you know, I'm just going to use pencil, because I'm pretty sure this is going to be hidden pretty well. I am holding the camera because my tripod was not really wanting to work with me for a minute, so. Okay, so I lightly marked out all 4 of these guys. And then what we're going to do is, you can see these little dots right here. We're going to line these up with them. That's pretty darn close. So if you look at this, the one that we're working on looks exactly like the one in the picture that it's showing us. And if you can see right here, this little fold over, it's really good to understand the key on your pattern. When it has this little gray field right here, that means that's the right side of the fabric. And that's the right side of the fabric. But this, where it doesn't have the colors, the wrong side of the fabric. So it's good to understand your key. And If you are not 100% sure, then in every pattern, well, every professional pattern, they'll have your key up here at the top. And that one will explain to you what each of the marks on throughout the whole pattern mean. So if you look here, let's see if we can find it. I think it's this one right here, number 10. Yeah, and it says printed side down. And then number 11, where it's clear white, you look down here and it means printed side up. So I'm going to go ahead and pin and mark both of these, and then I will meet you over at the sewing machine. So now back at the sewing machine, we're going to go ahead and just sew that box. I did lower my stitch length to 2.5. And we'll sew both plackets at the same time. Everything I'm doing in pair, but I'm probably only showing you one side of it. And you'll go ahead and you'll make your little cut as it shows in your pattern. You want to make sure that you get as close to your stitching as you can without actually snipping your stitching, because you will have to go back through and restitch it. And then to the ironing board, it'll show you in the pattern right here, step by step, how you iron everything. I know these can be really confusing, but definitely read through your instructions and I'll do my best to kind of explain it. This short side over here, what you're going to do is press that open. And then from the edge, you're going to fold over whatever it says that you need to fold over, which is roughly about 1/4 of an inch, 2 times. And I pulled out my trusty sewing clapper. And if you've been with me for a minute, you'll know that this device is amazing for getting a crisp ironed edge. So we'll go ahead and these pieces basically overlap each other, but the outside of the placket, this one main piece that I'm ironing right now, that piece is going to cover everything else. And you'll see it kind of folds over on top of itself. And I did have an argument with my sewing machine, so we're back at my normal bench that I sew at on my Singer sewing machine. And I'm going to keep it real. This little seamstress right here has never had that good of luck with a drop-in bobbin sewing machine. I don't know why. I do what I can. I try my hardest, and I tell you, me and that little brother sewing machine, it's a drop-in bobbin, and for some reason I always end up with problematic areas throughout my project, and it ends up looking like crap and I have to redo it. Oh, okay, I digress. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to sew the placket side that is attached to the main part of the fabric. We're going to sew from the very bottom all the way up to the top into that dart. Well, point, I guess you'd call it. And it really helps if you already have all of this folded and ironed over before you do it. So coming up around the top, we're going to come a little bit down and then do the crossbar. And then we'll go to the open side and we're just going to top stitch that open side edge, just to give it a clean finish. And if you've made it this far, congratulations! You're doing good. Now do it to the other side, so both of your plackets look like this. So now we're moving on to the cuffs. Cuffs are not hard to do, but if you don't do them right, and if you don't clip certain parts of the fabric out, or bend some of the parts of the fabric a certain way, they can come out looking really puffy. So bear with me. I pin my inside pieces so that way I know which one is going to be facing out, which one's going to be facing in. And if you follow me on Snapchat or Instagram, you'll know that I ran out of fabric and ended up having to go back to the store to get additional pieces of fabric to finish the shirt. And that's why I had to pin the inside, just to make sure that everything matched and looked appropriate. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to trim the top of the placket, well, the bottom of the placket down where we're adding the cuff. And we're doing that so these match up properly and are a straight line. And now that we have our cuffs sewn together and pressed, what you're going to do is take the edge of your placket opening and the edge of your cuff, and you're going to line those corners up right there. Now there are several ways to do this. I'm going to show you the way that I have found easiest for me. So I'll line these edges up right here, and I'm going to pin just right here on this edge. Through all those layers. And then I'll come in about an inch or two and I'll put another pin right here. Now keep in mind we have the pleats that we have to put in the sleeve. So we're going to go to the other side of the placket and the cuff and do the other side as well. Same way. Put them right sides together. The interfacing is stuck together. So put those edges together right here and line them up nicely. And always check the front and the back of your work, especially before you sew it. I can't tell you how many times I didn't check the back of a project. And then when I took it out of the sewing machine, I was excited because I thought I was done. I actually sewed through a part I wasn't supposed to and had to pick it out. Okay, so if you look at the pattern, it shows right here that the darts are going to be on a certain side. Now, I did mark them on the sleeve, and they are on the top part of the sleeve, as you see that I was pointing out. I did mark them, but a lot of the time, I like to kind of create my own pleats in the sleeve. Just because I don't know, I like doing things my own way. I don't follow rules very well. So sometimes it does help if you already have like a ready-made shirt and you can look at how the manufacturer did it. Looks like they put their pleat in the, oh, okay. So they put their pleat in where it was closest to the inseam. I don't really like that. It looks kind of, I don't know. We're not going to do it. We're going to do it my way. So then we're going to pin the whole cuff, and then we're going to make sure that the other, this is right sides together. So we're sewing just one side of the cuff, and the other side that will be facing toward the inside of the sleeve is kind of, we're pulling that out of the way. And I left most of these pins in because this was starting to get a little bit shifty. But when you go to cross over a pin with your sewing machine, be very slow and careful. Okay, so I folded this part over and I put a pin. And you can see right here, I just take my fingernail and poke it into that edge, and then I pin. And the side that you're looking at is the inside of the sleeve. And basically what we're going to do here is we're going to fold over that edge and we're going to pin it to where it is perpendicular with the stitching from the outside of the sleeve of the cuff. And then when we go to the sewing machine, you're going to want to sew on the outside of the sleeve. So the pins are toward the table of your sewing machine, so be very careful. And then you'll go through and take all your pins out from the back, and you have a done cuff. I hope you guys have learned something from this that I'm trying to teach you. Definitely stay tuned for part 2. We'll have that up very shortly, and we'll show you how we finish the attaching the sleeve, the collar, the finishing hem, and putting the buttons on and finalizing your shirt. If you have any questions, definitely leave them in the comment section down below. Don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel before you leave. Follow me on all other social media, and I will see you guys in part 2. Bye.